recorders on our phones at home, and I'd play that message of me saying hello, whatever. I go, my gosh, do I sound that?
We all feel that way when we hear our voice for the first time.
It's incredible.
Oh. So I appreciate you coming down here. I really do. I know it's Saturday, it's a day off, it's a day of relaxation, and I appreciate you giving some time to this. Can you tell me your name and a little bit about who you are and why you're here?
Robert Lupo. My full name is Robert E. Smith Lupo, named after my maternal grandfather and my dad, obviously, with the last name. And I love coming down here because the Rubensteins really are family to us. We go back now 3 generations, looking forward to the 4th generation. But it's been a pleasure to meet the Rubensteins and have them be not only a part of our family and our relationship with clothing, but they understand how important New Orleans downtown is. And to see both David and Andre and now Kenny coming along and being a part of the community that has an articulate message about downtown is very important, very important.
Tell me more, why was that something that you've been involved in? What's your connection here in New Orleans?
Well, we're 4th generation real estate developers in the city. My grandfather really was the one that started the development of Lakeview. And he was a clothes horse. And my grandfather, the Italian grandfather, was also a clothes horse, but neither one of them compared to what my dad was. He's a gentleman who, through the Rubensteins, was able to meet Mr. Brioni in the 50s. And I remember when I was 5 years old, I went over to Italy with the family, and Mr. Brioni took us in like he had known us forever, lunch and dinners, and to see the Italian lifestyle then as a 5-year-old was very impressive. But then to see my dad be considered one of the really fine gentlemen who knew how to dress and be a part of the community at the same time, not just flash, but of substance, was important. And the Rubensteins were a big part of that. They set the foundation for what was appropriate in the city at that time.
Oh, that's nice. Did you used to come into Rubenstein with your dad?
I started buying clothes here on my own at 17. Yes, I came in here very young, and I don't remember exactly when Dad first brought me here, but at 17, you have a car and you can do everything for yourself. And I remember coming, they had an area on the 3rd floor, I believe it was called the Aquarius Shop. So we're talking 1969, 1970. And so I bought those kind of clothes, but at the same time, I would go do important things and have to have great suits that reflected the importance of looking correctly at appropriate times.
Did you have any sense of like, this is an old man shop because your dad shopped here?
Not at all, because they had the Aquarius Shop and the Madison Shop, which were, different levels of clothing for different age groups. They always did that. I think that was why I was able to shop here. Because if it had been stuffy like Terry and Juden or something like that, which was prominent here, or I guess there was a Haspel Suit Company and Hickey Freeman. I remember those names, but that wasn't what my dad bought. My dad bought the Italian and French clothes that were a different level of fabric and presentation. It was more modern. But like I say, I was telling Kenny when we walked in that I was thinking about this last night, and I would say 95 to 98% of my slacks, custom dress shirts, all my sport jackets and suits and tuxedos and tails have been bought here for 53 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
Because I can think on 1 or 2 hands at the most that maybe we were traveling in Europe and I was in Rome and you go, I'll buy a jacket here, or New York for a week and you go into some store and go, well, I'll buy a suit here. But I could do that on 1 hand, maybe 2 at the most, over 53 years.
That's incredible.
And it's still, and again, I'll go back to the family thing. I'm not just, when I come here, I look forward to talking with David, Andre, and Kenny as much as I need this or that clothing-wise.
Well, that is that's quite a testament to the store.
It is.
You said that Lakeview is one of the places y'all developed.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about, as developers, what you understood about the suburbs and the role of the suburbs here in New Orleans and how that's changed and moved.
Well, it's always been a city of when you started to be a little more affluent, you moved out. The French Quarter was where the workers were, and then originally, the English moved up to St. Charles Avenue, and the French moved to Esplanade, and then Lakeview was a section where the blue-collar workers who started to own their own businesses started to move as well. So Lakeview was one of the typical moves of people who started to do better in life and moved outside. Then it was a very different thing, though.
When was that about?
Oh, that was the 40s,
That was the 40s.
during World War II. The 30s is when people started to buy land out there and start to develop houses. And then my grandfather came along. Interesting story. I'm going to give you a really brief aspect of it. At 14, he was unloading boxcars. He got turned over for a job in the 20s that he thought he should have gotten. He wrote a beautiful note, which no one does today, to his own wife, saying, I quit my job today. I'm going to go work for New Orleans Land Company, which was a company that was taking the swamp and turning it into land. And he just built off of his selling of lots and then building houses into the kind of person that when he died, he had given a library to the city of New Orleans. That's the great American story, and it really tells you a lot about Lakeview because it was the kind of place where that was happening.
So, where do you think this love of clothes came from for your father, for your grandfather?
That's a good question. I just think some gentlemen understand that the clothes do not make the man, but the clothes do represent what kind of man you are. Buying a beautiful, well-tailored suit doesn't make you somebody. But I think it does let people know who you are once you've understood that that's important to you. People now, they really don't care what they look like. All you have to do is go to an airport. And you go, well, obviously these people, the last thing they thought of when they left their house was, do I look okay? Because they all looked like they were doing gardening work and went, oh my God, I'm late. I got to get to the airport. And they did nothing about it. So it says who you are. It doesn't make you who you are. Does that make some sense?
It does. And when you get, what is it that you think,
Well, we live in a big city.
I know, it happens.
Living in New York, you heard it constantly.
Exactly.
I mean, it didn't matter what time of day it was.
Exactly. I kind of like it myself.
Well, it does. I'm sure it makes you feel like home.
I like it. My husband, who actually grew up there, now that we live in Charlotte, he's like, oh, it's so loud outside. I'm like, oh, honey, really?
How does he think that if he lived in New York? It never
I
stops.
don't know.
Because it is the city
just
that
lost
never
the habit.
sleeps.
But I'm curious, as you say that, what do you think, what kind of a man or image do you think comes with a Rubenstein's experience versus another experience? All of which are good experiences. This is not a better or worse thing, but what is distinctive about a Rubenstein's look or a Rubenstein's experience?
Well, I'm going to start off with, it says that you care about a lot of details. You don't go out and buy French cuff because you like it. It's because it's another detail about your life. And I think when you bring that to your work and your family, that it's all about details, that all good things fall into place. So I think it's a detail thing. I want to make sure my son learns to do the dishes. That's a detail about learning responsibility. I want to make sure in my office that people understand when someone comes into the reception area, it needs to look a certain way. And then if you're doing that, then you feel the same way about your clothes. So I think it means you're a detailed person. But ultimately, it means you care about your image because you are saying who you are.
And what is that you're saying?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm trying to let people know that I care about perceptions, obviously. I hope that doesn't sound very shallow. But I want people to know that I'm not the person that doesn't care about the details. And that means I care about your details. In other words, I want to hear about your life. I don't, when I ask how you are, I'm not just asking for, I'm fine today. I'm asking, oh yeah, well, actually in business, I'm doing fine. My kids are doing good in school. My wife's happy. Luckily, we're blessed with good health. That's what I'm asking when I say how you are. So that goes to the details again. So I think I'm saying that I'm interested in your details, my details.
That's good. I noticed that you have a monogram on your sleeve.
My dad, my grandfathers, both, and my dad. My dad was really known for it.
Yeah.
He was just one of those guys that was always perfect. He had the custom shirt shop in New York when that was a thing. You do shirts with the stripes going horizontally because he was very thin. And I mean, if that's not a detail, nothing is. All right.
Sure. And it sounds like you have a son.
Yes.
Have you taken him shopping?
Oh, of course. When it's important, and again, he's an individual that understands details. He doesn't dress as formally as I do on a daily basis, but when he does, boy, he is really into the details. And of course, this is where he goes because this is where they understand that. You can go to Saks and there'll be a guy there, and it's going to be a high-end piece of merchandise, but they're not going to put it together and know you like the Rubensteins are. Or take the time and effort and care. Again, they're going to care about you. I don't want to sound like I'm going on because of the Rubensteins, because of this, but I'm really telling you that's what keeps bringing people like me in here, is because it's a personal relationship. And boy, we don't have those anymore. Everybody's got a phone, and everybody's got a recorded message, and everybody's got somebody in India that you talk to when you're trying to get something done. So the concept that the Rubensteins have brought for 100 years, which is personal attention, is very rare today.
So you mentioned a little bit about the role of Rubensteins in the city, and I haven't had a lot of folks speak to that so far. Can you speak a little more about how you see the role that Rubensteins has played and the role it might play?
Well, it's twofold. Lately, the news media understands that if you want to know something about Canal Street and the merchandising end of it and the relationship that Canal Street has with the tourist industry, you really want to come to David and Andre. Yes, there are higher profile national and international restaurateurs, but they don't go to them because David and Andre are on the sidewalk. That's the difference. David and Andre see what's actually going on the street. These other high-end restaurateurs and hoteliers, they understand it on a business level, but it's elevated. And I think it's just incredible that they can articulate the situation on the ground for the tourists and that relate to the business and hopefully relate to our elected officials, and they listen. On the second level, it's what I told you about personal attention to the clothing industry. There is no doubt you can go to a business meeting, you can go to a board meeting, you can go to a social event, and you really know who's been put together by the Rubenstein brothers. It's different. It really is.
That's really interesting.
Because again, it's going to be details. It's going to be, does the pocket square really work with the tie? Or does this man been taught that, the shoes and the belt are an important relationship? So it stands out to me. Now, it may be because I look for details, but you don't have to look for details to know it when you see it. In architecture, a big thing is we all go, gosh, this building's beautiful. But 90% of the people, when you ask why, they have absolutely no idea. But the architects will tell you, well, what the eye is seeing and what you're understanding are these details. When I started architecture school, it's the first thing we did. They walked us through Tulane campus. They said, just take a look at the buildings as we head to this destination in the architecture building. And then we got up there and they said, pick one of the buildings you saw and draw me the facade. Well, 80% of us couldn't do it because we weren't looking at the details. We were just kind of seeing it. But did we know what buildings we appreciated? everybody had 2 or 3 that they went, well, that building got my attention, but very few of us understood why. So it's the same thing with clothing.
It's very perceptive, I think. I think that's really true. Um, I'm curious, I haven't lived here in a long time, so I don't have this is in the space of, if this were a journalism
Mhm.
interview, I would have done different research, but it's not, so I'm kind of taking a flyer. Post-Katrina, you are a developer. This was a crucial time. What did you think was important here? Was Canal Street important? What was important in terms of trying to find a way back from that experience?
It wasn't Canal Street. It was the individual, as I drove by, the 50 to 70-year-olds that I saw struggling to pull things out of their house that were destroyed, talking to them and finding out what was the reason they were either going to come back or give up. So I really think it was the average blue-collar worker. Were they going to be willing to take the incredible hardship that they knew was coming in the next 5 years? Did they have the right insurance? No one did. Did they have the resources to fall back on? Which nobody did. Were they willing then to risk taking out loans and putting incredible sweat equity? Because you saw these 50, 60, 70-year-olds pulling out sheetrock with their gloved hands. If those people weren't willing to take the risk, then there would have been no New Orleans. They really wouldn't have been, because those are the ones that eat in the restaurants. Those are the ones that buy the clothes at Rubenstein's or anywhere else. Those are the ones that go to Walgreens and get their medicine. If they're not here, it doesn't matter what those big corporations do. So to see them was incredible. Now, in the particular area where we have most of our developments, for 3 generations now, we've kind of been looked at to the people who have been willing to take that risk and make an investment in that Lakeview area and downtown, but mostly Lakeview. And I would get phone calls. What are you doing? What's the Lupo family going to do? I don't know, you want to hear all this.
I do,
but it goes along with the question. And they would say things like, well, our office building, which was, sat under 7 feet of water for 2 weeks, was in a shape that you can't describe. Every piece of infrastructure to the building was destroyed. And when we were able to put together what we were going to do, and they saw the reconstruction happening, I got phone calls from like civic associations. There were 3 in the area. And those people I obviously knew who were on the board. They would go, Robert, you're going to do this. You're going to come back. Your family's not just going to go, I've had it. Please, when you get the office building up, only a little 5-story office building, only 50,000 square feet, turn every light on in that building at night. Let everybody know that it can happen, it will happen, and you as representing this family that made the biggest investment in this area, that you're willing to take the sacrifice on. That was powerful to me. It really was. First of all, I'd never realized that people looked at us that way, but that they needed to see from someone, because they were all turning to each other, going, are you coming back? Neighbor to neighbor to neighbor, are you coming back? It was staggering to see what people were willing to do to come back.
That is a powerful story.
And none of them, we got to add this, nobody said, what is in Lakeview? Said, what's the government going to do to make this happen? That was not a question. They knew that wasn't something. They knew that was not who they could rely on. Yeah, there might have been this road home program or that, but the bureaucracy and the paperwork and the aggravation behind that, they knew would take so long that if they got something from it, it would have been too late. They needed to do, plus it's just nature of us
Why do you think,
as human beings to do something now.
why do you think, I really have this question for Andre and David as well. Why work so hard to come back?
I do have the answer to that. There were several of my friends. We were fortunate. We had a second home in Colorado. And after we evacuated to Houston, thinking it was going to be a 2-day thing, I sent my mother to where my sister had a second home, and my wife and daughter moved up to Colorado, put our daughter in a school there, and our son was in college at University of Alabama, so we didn't have to worry about him. I got on the phone with a conference call. It probably was about 7 or 8 of my closest friends who were also businessmen, owned their own businesses. Let's put it that way. That's what was the important part. And everybody's saying, what do we do? Some of them had businesses that could go anywhere. Mine was real estate, which I either rebuilt this or I really had nothing. So there really wasn't a big decision for me. But we were having the discussion at home. Should we move to New York? My wife was offered an incredible position with a brand new hospital. So we were offered some things that were pretty attractive. So everybody's going back and forth, going, well, we're not going to have this, and well, who's going to be left in the population, and what is the government going to really do, and can they rebuild? And it got kind of quiet because the questions weren't being answered. And then I said, guys, do you all, we're 50 at that time. I go, do y'all want to make new friends? Do y'all want to, in order to make new friends, join country clubs you know nothing about and try to find these new people because none of our schoolmates are going to be there. And New Orleans, it's a big thing where you went to high school and you're still in touch with them. Are you interested in making a new life or rebuilding the life that you knew you had? And it was unanimous. Everybody said, oh, gosh, you put it right. That we didn't think of that. We thought of all the monetary things and the logistical things, but we didn't think about the personal things. And I'm sure that's what made David and Andre and that family go, this is what we do, and this is where we do it, and I'm going to throw all that memory away?
This is my space. This is my patch.
There is something to it.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate that because I have had questions about that, and I know that it's a little off what I presented, but I appreciate you being willing to share. Thinking about Rubenstein's again for just a moment, I'm curious, did your wife shop at the ladies' shop when it was open here?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And do you have anything, any memories from that time other than what did you just spend this money on?
No, I just remember. Well, first of all, my wife can spend her own money.
Right.
Okay. She makes her own money.
I didn't mean it that way. I just meant like my husband and I sometimes we both have our own money, but we look at Bill sometimes and he's like, "Is that what you always spend on a haircut?" And I'm like, "Oh, honey."
You can't do that anymore because everything costs more than we think it's worth. Okay. I remember that both the Rubenstein wives were always anxious to do this, to have the same kind of attitude that David and Andre had, which was, what can we do for you? It's just something special, because in women's wear, it's all, in New Orleans, there's a lot of specialty stuff. You go to these balls and fundraisers where you really dress up, and that's not everywhere. And they would do anything. You like this dress? Yeah, well, that woman she does work here in New Orleans, but she'll meet with you and make a change here, make a change there. And again, that's that personal attitude to the detail that the customer wants, that if we'd have left, we'd have never been able to generate that with somebody else. And I think that's a very Southern thing. I don't know if I'm right with that, but I feel that that's a very Southern thing.
Do you feel like, you may not know because as you said, you only have a handful of things from other places, but you surely buy things other than clothes elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So do you think there's a distinctive difference in the approach to sales here?
Say that again?
Do you think there's a difference in the approach to sales here than there is when you go to buy something, even in another place in New Orleans where it might still be somewhat personal?
Yes, I mean, the difference is just in the atmosphere. Again, I keep going back to the same word, personal touch, family. It's not about the sale. It's about, are you going to be happy with this? Surely they, the Rubensteins had this wealth of information that they can give me. And it may look like a sales pitch that we've got this and that, and I can do this and I can do that. But I don't feel that that's what they're doing. I really feel that they're, well, I'll give you this example. Xenia, like everybody else, changes their styles every so often. But they have a jacket cut called the Napoli that, for my body shape, is it. And they did away with it at one point in time. And the Xenia people were here, and Kenny went, well, and David got together, the guy went, but Robert likes his Napoli on this. And, they went ahead and did it. I don't think you get that everywhere. I mean, I just don't think so. But they knew that about me. So when they saw that this cut of this new style that they wanted to say was replacing that style, they had the background on me, the background on the company, and the interest to not just go, Robert, this is what's new. Right. This is what everybody's doing. I don't care what everybody's doing. Go to the airport. I know what everybody's doing. Okay, so that's not important to me what everybody else is doing or what's the latest thing. Yeah. And I think most people who buy, who care about their clothes, not necessarily buy high end, but care about their clothes, they're not interested in the latest, greatest. Who was it? I had a friend whose wife went into the clothing business, a little store. And he said, she's always got the first with the worst. And I'll never forget that. First with the worst.
It's unfortunate. Well, I really appreciate your time. This has been terrific.
Oh, this is fun because
is there
it's
anything that you feel like you haven't gotten an opportunity to share yet or haven't asked about?
Now, I gave this some thought about stories and background. You came up with some very interesting things that go far beyond just the clothes and the Rubenstein family. And I think that's important to know that the Rubenstein family, 100 years of clothing, but they're more to the community than that. But that's important. And I hope I've said how the clothing thing and the community thing all really do go together. They really, really do.
You have, and I really appreciate that, and I appreciate your time very much. It's been